No. Page 186. Oh, you have the wrong one. You have the different one. It's Perek Vav from Tefillin Mezuza Sefer Torah. Yeah.
Daily Rambam for Wednesday, Yud Beis Tishrei Tavshin Pei Aleph, the 6th Perek of Hilchos Tefillin, Mezuza and Sefer Torah. So in the last year we began Hilchos Tefillin, the Perek Aleph. We learned about the ink and the parchment and Lishma and Sirtut and other things as well. In Perek Beis, there were various details regarding the writing itself, Psucha, Stuma, Smale, Chaser, Tagim, also regarding checking Tefillin and Perek Gimel. There are 8 additional halachas, halach l'meishim Sinai, of how exactly the tefillin are constructed, square, the shape of the shin on the shalosh, the black ritzuas, the kesher is the shape of a dalet, etc. Perek Dal, we had dinei hanochas tefillin, where do you put the tefillin on the body, what's the seder of putting it on, what's the time of putting it on, gufnaki, etc. In Perek Hey, we began Hilchos Mezuza, and the Rambam spoke about how you write it, and just the general idea of putting the mezuzah up, how it's put up. Checking the mezuzah, who's chayav in the mezuzah. Now in Perek Vav, this is actually one of the Perek where the Rambam himself is going to introduce most of the topics of the Perek. So let's just see how the Rambam does it himself. Halacha Aleph, Perek Shishi, Halacha Aleph. Outside of Tanoin Yesh Babayis, there are 10 conditions in a home, in a room, in a dwelling. And if you meet all 10, then whoever lives there is obligated to put a mezuzah there. And if one of these conditions is lacking, then you are exempt. So number 1, Shiyah by Arba Amas al Arba Amas Yasser, so it has to be a space of 4 by 4 cubits. Number 2, Shiyah le Shtei Mezuzas, it has to have 2 doorposts. 3, V'yiyah le Mashkef, it has to have a lintel over the doorway. 4, V'tiyah le Tikra, it has to have the room itself has to have a roof. 5, V'yiyah le Delasis, there have to be doors to the room, it can't be a room without doors. 6, Shiyah Geva Ashar Asar Tfachim Ayasser, the height of the entrance is 10 Tfachim or more. 7, base choil. It has to be a non-holy locales. We'll see the halachas regarding the base knesses, etc. 8, also the diras adam. It has to be actually a place where a person can reside, can live. But also number 9, also diras kovid. It has to be a respectful kind of dwelling. But number 10, also diras kava. It has to be a permanent dwelling. And the Rambam is going to go through these 10 in the following halachas. So number 1. Arba Amas al Arba Amas. So the Rambam says, Halacha Beis Bayish in by Arba Amas al Arba Amas. If you're lacking that minimum space within the room, Pater min Mezuzah, so you don't exempt from a Mezuzah. Yesh Boy Kedei l'Rabbeya Arba Amas al Arba Amas. Now the Rambam adds, however, even if it isn't literally a 4 by 4 room, however, there is space within it that you could put together 4 by 4. Shaveh. Even if it's a tri-corner room or a pentagon, has 5 sides. For sure, if it's just a rectangle and it's just stretched out in a certain way, since there is actually enough space within, so it is chayav mezuzah. What's the marker? The marker is actually Masechah Sukkah, Daf Gimel. It says over there, Taner Rabban, Bayish, and Arba Amas, Arba Amas, Patrim, Mezuzah, and Amaika, and a whole bunch of other things. So according to the Rambam, especially from the end about the rectangle, it's clear that we're not just saying that, let's say within a circle, there's, you have more sukkah, if you can make a daled amas within the circle or not. We're talking about even if it's totally a rectangle, it's totally stretched out, there is no actual space of 4 by 4, but as long as you have 16 square cubits somewhere within the space, so if you were to rearrange the space, you could be mirabeya, you can create a new space of 4 by 4, that's enough, as long as it's somewhere within that space. The Kasaf Mishnah notes that the Rosh argues, the Rosh says in Hilchos Mezuza that Dalad al Dalad, Miruboy Spinin has to be actually square. Otherwise, it's not a dira. Part of the Dalad al Dalad is a dira. What if you have a rectangle that's stretched out, something ridiculous? It has Dalad al Dalad technically in there, but could you live in there now? If you look in we don't have out today, but Shulchan Aruch on Hilchos Mezuza, you look in Shulchan Aruch here today, Simonish Pevav. You look in the Mechaber just writes Bias She'ein Boy Dal Dalit Potter, and you have Kedei l'Rabbeya. So it just basically seems to go with the Rambam. If you look in the Shach, on that's if the Shach says V'das Hara She'ein Chayv Mezuzah. Now Beis Yosef on the Torah said, why am I not even going to mention the Rosh in the Shulchan Aruch? Because he has this whole system, the Rif, the Rambam, and the Rosh. So if only one of them disagrees, you follow the majority, and here the Rif either maybe said nothing or whatever, but only the Rosh is the one disagreeing here. So he doesn't even bother mentioning the Rosh in the Shulchan Aruch. That's why Lehevi kind of divided Rambam. But the Shach says there's also Rabbi Yeruchim. There's another Rishon who says, holds like the Rosh, and he says v'kasav shekain tafsu ikar, that actually that seems to be the halachically, at least in Ashkenaz, they went with the Rosh. So therefore the Shach says if you're putting a mezuzah on such a room, it should be without a bracha, or make a bracha on a different room first, and then have a mind for this room as well, but not to actually make a bracha on mezuzah for this kind of room. Okay, moving on to Tanai number 2, that you need to have doorposts. So the Rambam says achsadra. So achsadra is hu amakim sheish leishleish aksalim v'tikra. So it has 3 walls and a roof. Now, what exactly is an achsadra? So actually, achsadra is a Greek word. It's still somewhat familiar in English today. An exedra. So the way an exedra is described is it's a semicircle. I don't know if that's mukhrach, but it's sort of like a platform. It has it's not its own. It's not a normal room. It's not part of a building. It's sort of a special architectural room next to buildings. And interestingly, it says that the exedra usually was next to a stoa. What's a stoa? Yeah, also in Chazal, a stov. Stav is like a walkway, a portico that has poles along the way. So that was one kind of architectural design the Greeks had. The stav, the stoa. Next to it, you had an exadra, etc. So it's not actually. Rambam is actually going to mention exadra later in Halacha Zayin as a place where you don't live anyway. But here we're just talking about the particular design. So the design has 3 walls and a roof. But the 4th side is completely wide open. Even though technically, if you look at there is a pole on one end, a pole on the other end of that empty 4th side, still Paturim and Mezuza, it's still Pater Pnei Shapatzimin Lahamna Tikrein. Those poles, those boards, whatever they are, they're just there to hold the roof up. They just needed a support on the 4th side. There's no wall, so they have to put Patzim in there. But Lemishim Mezuza's Nasu, those aren't doorposts. It's not in any sense a doorway. So an Achsadra would be Pater.
Is a beautiful picture.
Yeah,
here.
so here's just sort of an architectural room. There's something on poles on either side, but they're for design or for supporting the roof. They're not. It's not a doorway. Yeah, thank you. And similarly, the Rambam says. That doesn't, you have a roof without walls at all. You just have poles going all around. Even though it's similar to what you would imagine a room to be. Again, there are no doorposts here, even if everything else was okay. All these poles are just to hold the roof up. There's no doorway here, right? So
how about the arch in a living room? It's not really used for to hold up the tikra or any of that. Nevertheless. Why?
Let me let's. I'm just looking at the wrong thing here. First, let's just see the Shulchan Aruch, and then we'll see. Also, we're going to see in the next halacha about if it's an arch, if it's not an actual. We're also going to see later about if there's a room of residence somewhere deeper inside, all the doorways on the way to that residence need mezuzahs. So there are many other factors here as well. Yeah. So let me first quote the Shulchan Aruch on this halacha. So the Shulchan Aruch says really essentially the same thing. Chsadra, that is 3 ksalim, tikra, even the patzimin doesn't mean that it's chayv mezuzah. If it does have mechitza on the 4th side, the Shulchan Aruch adds av bishenemucha oisha suya chalenis even if it's low, or it has chalenis. So the shach and the taz actually saying chalenis is not talking about the 4th side. Even if the whole kol tzadeh has chalenis, but if it's 4 sides, then it would be chayav. Then you wouldn't have this issue of the achsadra, the 4th wall, the doorway.
What about the circular room?
So we mentioned earlier that according to Rambam, as long as there's 4x4 within that space, 16 square cubits. Halacha Dalid. So now moving on, this is going to cover number 3 and number 6. So number 3 was that it should have a mashkaf, and number 6 is that the Goyva Hashar, the entrance, should be 10 tefachim or more. So this is what the Rambam says. So a room that has 2 doorposts, but instead of a mashkaf is a lintel. Actually, Rashi brings this word in Parshas Boy when it says they had to put the blood on the mashkaf. Rashi says, "Hua elyon shadal sheikef olav kshesegunay say lintel." So it's a word in French. So kippah come in keshes al shtei hamezuzas b'mkei hamashkav, and instead of a normal lintel over the top, there's sort of a kippah. There's a rainbow, the shape that shape instead of a straight mashkav. So the Rambam says like this: Yesh b'goyev hamezuzas asar tfachim hayaser chai b'mezuzah. If the mezuzas themselves are 10 tvachim or higher, so sort of the entrance, you can say at least the entrance, the mezuzah, which is framed by the doorposts, the doorway, the doorposts are 10 tvachim or more, so it is chai b'mezuzah. V'me'em ben asara, and if not, then pater p'nei she'en lemashkiv. Then there's no lintel. So the Kesef Mishnah says, I don't really understand the connection. If the kippah counts as a mashkev, so then even if the mezuzahs are not 10 tvachim high, it should be okay. And if the kippah doesn't count as a mashkev, so if the mezuzahs are 10 tvachim high, how does the height of mezuzahs turn the kippah into a mashkev? That the Ram doesn't really explain. This actually has its own siman in Shulchan Aruch, Hilchos Mezuzah, the next siman, siman Eish Pei Zayin. What the Mechaber wrote, la halacha was, Bayesh Yesh Mezuzah Mikana Mikam Kippah Min Keshes Shtei Mezuzah Mikam Mashkev. Basically the same thing. Yesh b'goyev hamezuzas yud tfachim hayeser chayv, ein bo yud tfachim pater p'nei she'en lemashkev. And then Hagav, the Ramah, is that v'chol shekein pesach she'en legoyev asar tfachim the pater b'mezuzah. If the just a normal entrance isn't 10 tfachim high, so for sure it's pater from mezuzah. We're not going to get into the additional shakavataria about this halacha. Just to note that Ramah adds another detail there. It says, "Haminig nespashet medinas elu." The minig already spread in Europe. The reiv olam simchin al mezuzah achas she'oisen al pesach b'teim. Everyone's relying on the one mezuzah, one doorpost that's in the entrance to their house. Any nachin, it's not right. There's nothing to rely on here, and therefore every day shemayim should make the house properly. The psachim now. If you read this unclear, is he saying they're relying on one mezuzah and putting a mezuzah up anyway, because even though there's only one doorpost? But if you look in the context of the Maril, it actually seems to be the opposite. And I'm going to maybe quote it a bit later at greater length. In the time of the Rishonim and Ashkenaz, it seemed that people were always trying to avoid being mechuyev and putting up a mezuzah. Mezuzahs seem to be very uncommon then. And so it seems like what the Ramah is quoting here is that they said, there's only one doorpost, not another. They were trying to play around with the entrance a bit, take away from the chiyuv, and that's what the Ramah seems to be going Marilla saying, that the Yirei Shemayim should be trying to get your doorposts and your doorways right, so you can put mezuzah up and not find some kind of way out. Now for number 4 and number 5. So number 4 and number 5 were about that the room has to have a roof, and the room has to have a door. So first about the roof. Halacha, hey, bayish ainli tikra pater min mezuzah. If the room, the dwelling doesn't have a roof, no mezuzah. Hayim miktasa mikayir and miktasa ein mikayir. If it's partially and partially not, yirali shemaya kidik. And they're gonna pasach shuchayv mezuzah. So the key is what's at the actual point of entry. If there's roofing there, then at least for that space, that's its own room. So you can put a mezuzah for that space. I'll read the last line in a moment. The Kesef Mishnah says, "Milsa desvaru," was not clear in the Gemara, but it makes sense. And the Rabbi Menayach says that the kirui itself has to be dalet al dalet. It has to be that we're basically saying that's the part of the room. It's mechuyev mezuzah, so that part would have to be dalet al dalet. So if you look in the Shulchan Aruch Taka, it says bias without a tikkun it's pater. If it's partially, it's going to get a pesach chayv. Hushi, but mechuyev dalet al dalet has to be 4x4. And the Shach adds, doesn't literally have to be 4x4. According to what the Rambam said earlier, that could be kedei l'rabeya, so even if it's a rectangular area near the door, but as long as it has 16 square amas, then that roofing, you can put a mezuzah for that part of the room with that roof. Now, the final line of the Rambam, you need to put up the door first, and then you put up the mezuzah. So what's the makar for this? So the makar is, it's Gemara Menachos. It says, Reish Galusa Bana Beisa, Reish Galusa, Exilarch, position you had in Bavel. He built the house, and he told Rav Nachman, put mezuzahs up for me. And Rav Nachman said, Tali Dashi Bereshi, you have to put the door up first. A lot of Makairis and Chazal regarding the relationship between Rav Nachman and the Reish Galusa. They come up in a lot of stories. Anyway, so the Ravid immediately jumps here and says, Gemara isn't saying you need to have a door there. You literally need to have a door. It was just because of Heker Tzir. The concept of Heker Tzir, we're not sure which way, which is the main entrance, because later we're going to learn about Heker Tzir and Halacha Yud Aleph, that you're not sure if it's a room on either side. How do you determine which is the main room? Which of course has more of a significance in Chabad, but there's a concept of Hekert Seer right in the Gemara, and it was that kind of scenario where you needed Hekert Seer. So that's why Menachem said, in this particular case, I actually don't know where to put the mezuzah up, so please put up a door, and then based on which way the door is opening, then I'll know which is the main room and which is the other room. However, obviously the Rambam is understanding the Gemara differently. So it's actually a shaila and a tshuva to the Rambam. The Chachmi L'Nil sent a number of questions to the Rambam. This was one of them. And the Rambam responded and they asked the same question. Isn't it just for Hekert Seer? So the Rambam said, "Leiteidu she'ikra mitzvah leitala isa ela bashar." The whole mitzvah is built around doors, doorways. Shneimah mezuzah b'sacha u'v'sharecha. Mezuzah is the doorpost. V'sharecha is the door itself. So we put mezuzahs in two places. It says mezuzah b'sacha u'v'sharecha. So we're putting a mezuzah on the mezuzah and on the shar? No. It has to be where there is a shar. It says, Chazal says, Echad shari bottom, Echad shari medinas. It doesn't say Chazal, Echad pische bottom. If there's no door, you call it a Pesach. If you wouldn't call it a shar. If there's a shar, it means there's a door. He says, V'lein stop exel is shum chacham ba'elam. He says, I don't even know where this is coming from. No sage has ever had this question before. Ein achiv toli ela b'shar k'pashtei dekra. It literally has to be a shar, and a shar means it's literally a door. And that's the story of Reish Kulas and Rav Nachman, that the point was that you needed to put Rav Nachman said you have to put the door up first, and then you put the mezuzah. So that's the Rambam's opinion. The Chama writes in Shulchan Aruch, Habayis av b'shein leitlos is chayiv mezuzah. So first he writes that the door without a house without doors is obligated in mezuzah. He's referring to the Rambam. And then the Shach comes and says that there's a marker that says that if the door is important, so if you put the mezuzah up before the door, you created a tasav lemina situation. You put the mezuzah up and then you put the door. So it says in order to make sure you're being yetz all the opinions, so first you should put up the door and then you should put the mezuzah. And if you can't, then it should be without a bracha or make a bracha on a different one. And then when you put up the door, you should take the mezuzah off and put it back on. So created a bit of a mess, these different opinions here on how to understand that Gemara. Now moving on to number 7. There has to be a base choil. Has to be a mundane room. You don't get holier than the harabayas itself. So all the different rooms and offices, etc., and spaces in the harabayas, as well as ubate knesiyos, ubate midrashes, she'em behem beis dira, or any base knesset, base medrash which doesn't have an apartment, no one lives there. Pturim, they're patul of yishein kodesh, they're holy. It's only for base chayil. Base knesset shel kfarim she'archen donim. However, base knesset on the road in a village where there's people passing through, and that's where they stay, and then chayv mezuzah because people live there. Or even if it's in a big city, if it's the kind that's built with an apartment. So every shar, every doorway in the base should not have a mezuzah. Chutz mishar nikanar v'shalafnim imenu v'shalishkas palhadrin. This in our Gemara seems to be shar nikanar leads to lishkas palhadrin, but the Rambam splits it. Shar nikanar and whatever it leads to, and of lishkas palhadrin. But the Rambam concludes, all more or less the same point, that we learned in Maseches Yuma that they used to take the Kangam out of his house for a week, Shivas Yimei HaFrasha, and he lived in Lishkas Palhadrin. So that's the one residence over here. So not only that, but also the gates along the way are also chayav. Like I said, I think we're going to mention it somewhere further on, maybe Nalach Yud. So if you look in the pile, what's the law of the base knesset and the base medrash? So if you look in Shulchan Aruch in Simonish Pevos and Siv Gimel, the Mechaber says base knesset yesh b'dir l'shum echad. If someone lives there, chayv mezuzah, but only if someone lives there. Hagad Rama adds that if the residence is actually in the space before you enter the shul, then it's not mechayev the shul. Only that room on the way in is chayev, and the base knesset itself is potter. Only if it's all the way around, if the shul leads to the apartment. But in Sif Yod, the Mechaber writes, Beis HaMedrash potter me'mezuzah, v'yesh oimrim, she'beis HaMedrash chayav mezuzah, it's best to listen. Don't make a bracha on that. sources in the Torah. The Torah says in Yerushalmi, it says that the Beis Medrash of Chanina did have a mezuzah, and it adds that Maram Rottenberg also put a mezuzah on the Pesach of his Beis Medrash, and he said because what used to happen was he used to take a nap in his Beis Medrash, and there was some kind of evil spirit that was disturbing him. So that was the message. You got the message that you have to put up a mezuzah, and this is also linking it to the idea of protection, which the Rambam may not be so comfortable with. But that's what the Rambam Rottenberg said, that he felt the presence of something bad, and he put up the mezuzah, and then the problem went away. And that's how you end up in Shulchan Aruch saying Yesh Eimrim and Noch Shadavreim. So now for number 8, so Diras Adam. So Rambam says Beis HaTavin, Beis HaBakar, Beis HaEitzim, Beis HaEitzris. These are all kinds of storage. Either you're storing the hay, or it's where the animals are, or the wood, or your oitzris, or you have the grain. So they're all pater from mezuzah. Shnemer beisacha, it's where you live, your abode. Beischa meyuchad l'cha, some place that you consider a home for yourself. Prat le'elu v'chayitzeben, excluding these and anything like them. L'fichach rafas bakar shanashim yeshus ba. So for some reason, apparently there was some kind of reality that's being acknowledged here, that if you have some kind of barn where the women use also as their place where they sort of put their kishutna, whatever it is, either their jewelry or makeup, whatever. Hayavas for mezuzah, so it would be obligated in the mezuzah because it is being used for people's space. Beis shar, achsadra, merpesas, v'hagina, v'hadir. So these are additional types of places. They're not actual places of storage. So Beishar is some kind of guard house on the way in. Achsadra is what we mentioned earlier. Pesach is a porch. Gina is a garden. Deer is also a place where animals are. Maybe it's not. I guess there's a difference between Beis HaBakar and a deer. They're pater mezuzah as well because they're not some place where you would live. However, if there is a separate room that is obligated in mezuzah and they're open to these spaces, so then they all get the chiyuv, they're leading to that room that needs a mezuzah, so they also get a mezuzah. So here you have this idea that even the shar to a yard, which leads to apartments, or a mavai that leads to many chatzeres, or even the shar of the whole city, they all are obligated because all the houses that are obligated are all open into that space. Even if you have 10 in a row, one leads to the next. That's the text I have here is Afilu Sar Psachim. Because the one all the way on the inside is obligated, so they all are. Apparently in Chazal, it says Shar Pesuk Menagin L'Chatzer is already Chayav Mezuzah.
You make a bracha on that, or you put that on together with something else?
Not clear. I don't know if I saw that addressed. Let's see. First of all, you have the Maril. So I mentioned earlier that the Maril spoke about the reality in his days. So if you look at the Maril in Hilchos Mezuza, he writes like this. It's actually a quote from a tshuva. Someone asked Maril, late Rishonim, early Achreinim, if it's Yuhara, if it's if you're putting a lot of mezuzahs up all over, every door of your house has a mezuzah. Someone asked if that was Yuhara, you're overdoing it. Not sure who is Maril, or I think in the future, I think he says Maril in a bit. He's going to say that he does. So Vaheshev, he says, Mi yitain v'hoyel avavim zelahem liyiras Hashem kol hayamim lahasir michshel zeis m'derahami. If only they had this yiras Hashem to do this, because they have this michshel. All the people who live here, they're over and they're Isa and they're Rabbanan. Oh, so this is the Maharam. He's calling Maharam. The Maharam says Maharam in a tshuva that all the rooms are chayiv, and in his house he had 24 mezuzahs. For all the psachim, and for even the rooms of the bachrim, I guess the bachrim that learned, they all had, and that's a big chiddush, that he had 24 mezuzahs in his house. And Ostreich, which is a different part of Germany, there was more common to have mezuzahs. His V'loi Noida, where did this whole habit come from? Dinas halalu, everyone's trying to get out of. He says Beis HaChayref, he says, oh, we have Kishut Anashim, Tinuf Yeladim. There's all kinds of excuses. The women are here, the children are here, the women, the children, the Shmutz. He says, we're in the bedroom. They say the Tashbates. There's a source that says that maybe for carrot, if the man and woman are sleeping there, that's not an appropriate place to put a mezuzah. He says in the Marteif, in the basement, they say the Rambam said that Eitzres are potter. So for every single part of the house, they find a different marker that says that it's potter from mezuzah. Says all these timim, they're not good. Lav desamchohu kulu chayavim. Certainly no yuhara. Same thing he says with matnas kahuna. Interestingly, zuraya l'chayim and keva. That the minig is we don't give matnas kahuna, but Maram said there's no yuhara. If you want to do matnas kahuna, no problem. You're doing a mitzvah. You're very into doing an actual mitzvah. If you look on the Beis Yosef and Simon Resh Pei Vav, he quotes another interesting source that was cited. Even if there's tinaifis there, that's the Torah. He's quoting the Torah. That even if there's tinaifis, he says, where did the Torah get this from? He says, looks like the Torah got it from the Smag. The Smag says, Yesh Oimrim. Some say Sheyesh B'Yerushalmi, that it says somewhere in the Yerushalmi, Ir Sheyesh B'Chazeirim Paturim Min HaMezuzah. A city with Chazeirim, the whole city's potter. Riva says Nishtaka Hadavar V'Lo Yamer Ki Badak B'Kulei. V'Lo says I went through the whole Yerushalmi. Challenge accepted. I went through the whole Yerushalmi. I looked, and I couldn't find it. It happens to be there are a lot of quotes in the Rishonim Ashkenaz that are attributed to the Yerushalmi that are not in the actual Yerushalmi, but they are accepted as since the Rishonim quote it. And there's research that's been done on it. There may have been a certain chibur that included Yerushalmi with additional quotations in it, and that whatever was in that chibur was also quoted as Yerushalmi. But at least in this case, he took it very literally at face value. There's no such Yerushalmi. I checked the whole Yerushalmi. It says, even if there is some kind of medrash, some kind of chazal source, so it says, Zeo dafka Pesach habayis shechazeirim mitzuyim shem. Don't have to be mamish, the entrance where the chazeirim are, but the inner, let's say that will be the outside of the house, maybe the Pesach habayis. But chadorim, ba'aliyas, all the rooms inside would be chayav. And even the Pesach habayis, he says, if the shlish we're going to say later that the mezuzah has to be by the shlish elyon, the top third. If the shlish elyon is higher than 10 tvachim, you can also put the mezuzah there. It's nowhere near the chazeirim. Amnam, he quotes that there was the minute to cover it. Meaning, if there is a lot of shmutz and you feel it's a little disrespectful, you can cover it. You can put the mezuzah up and then cover it by the Pesach. It says, I also do that. If there's children there, cover it. If you care about it to that extent, to do that. So that's the Mezuza is saying this smag seems to be the marker of the Torah, and the other Rishonim, Mordechai, the Kolbai.
But it doesn't look like the Rambam also like that.
Rambam didn't mention tinaifis as a factor at all. He mentioned though Eitzis, which Maril quoted as something you shouldn't rely on.
That you should not rely
like the basement, the one put on the basement because that's my Eitzer. That's where I keep all my stuff. And Maril said, don't rely on that.
Then what?
Don't rely on that. I'm going to quote the Shulchan Aruch in a second. How the Shulchan Aruch. And again, he quotes the Kass of Smak and about this Ir Sheish B'Chazeirim Termin HaMezuzah. He says Kasav Ben Yeruchim for Kasav Rashba Shleimatzakein. I don't think Rashba means the Rashba from Spain. I think Rashba means from Bali Atesva Shleimatzakein B'Shnei Talmudim. Also, the same quote really. There it says Riva, here it says Rashba. So, but someone looked and he didn't find it anywhere. It's actually you got a big punishment for being Mavatal Mezuzah. It's not something to play around with. A lot of additional shakavatari on this whole topic. If you look in the Shulchan Aruch, it says Elo HaMekayim Shechayav Mezuzah. Shari Batim, Shari Chatzeres, like we said, Rambam said. Rafes Bakar, Lulin, it's just Yayin V'Shemen, all on the list of places that are Chayav Mezuzah. Beisa Isha, Beisa Shutfim, all Chayav Mezuzah. However, if they're goyim, then the Ramah brings in a kul of goyim. If the house is shir by a goy, pater mezuzah, or even a chotzer, if there's miktas goyim there, pater mezuzah. The mechaber continues this: beis hataven, beis ha'etzim, beis ha'bakar, are all chayev. If the women wash there, it's mamish, that's new. So then it's not kvayt shemayim to put a mezuzah there. It says bedafka there. The Ramah says dafka if it's this not a normal room, but if it's a cheder mamish, if it's a real room in your house, I'll feel a makom sheish v'isha yeshenim u'masham sham. Even if it's mamish the bedroom, chayiv mezuzah la'alacha. Yesh imrim neish makilin and say that if there's women there, it's pater. But Nirali, he concludes that if the door is on the inside and the mezuzah ends up being on the outside, so the mezuzah isn't where the people are sleeping anyway, so chayiv l'kuli alma. So that's Lamaisa, Halach Lamaisa and Shulchan Aruch. Now for number 9 and number 10, based on Kisei, based on Merchatz. So this is a little bit where the Tunefes idea comes from. Based on Kisei, based on Merchatz, based on Tevila, based on Bursa, Chayetzebem, determined on Mezuzah, B'She'en Nasun, and Diras Kavod. A bathroom, a bathhouse, a mikveh, a tannery. So those are pater from Mezuzah because it's not a Diras Kavod. That was number 9. It has to be a respectable abode. And now Diras Kava. So Sukkot Chag, Bechag. So when Sukkot comes and you have a Sukkah, or you have some kind of structure on a boat, because it's not a permanent residence. Yetzirun here means a pottery. So if you have the potter sat in some kind of sukkah, there was two, one next to the other. The outer one is potter because it's not permanent. You have to know the reality of what reality was like. And here he also says that the stores, at least the Ikar Din, are pater min Mezuzah because it's not where people live. We have to finish off here now. Halacha Yud. A house with a number of entrances. Even if you only going to use one entrance and exit, but you're obligated to put one in every entrance. If you have a small entrance between the house and the attic, also needs mezuzah. Let's say you have an additional room inside the house. Apparently that's maybe even a chiddush. Maybe until now we assumed houses had one room. I don't know. But if you have a second room inside the house, even if it's a room inside of a room, you have to put a mezuzah on every entrance, outside, inside. Each one is a residence and it's kavua, so each one has its own chiyuv. If you have an entrance between the base medrash and base knesses and your house, so now the question is, which side do we go by? Is it your house is chayav, the base medrash is potter? If you're going in and out, so it's attached to your house, so it's chayav from mezuzah for that reason. Pesach shebein shnei batim. If you have a door connecting two houses, so which is we're going to say in a minute, it's Yemin HaNichnas, it's supposed to be in the right of the person going in, which is the direction going in. So we follow the tzir, we follow the markings, the way the door is set up, which way the door opens. The side where you see the hinge, meaning the door is opening into the other room. Sham kaivanas hamezuzah. So that's the main side. That's hanichnas, and we take that we take that a bit further to every room. Halacha, that's a whole discussion. I wasn't planning on getting into that whole topic. Halacha Yud Beis. Now, where do you actually put the mezuzah? Precisely in the doorway. Pesach in the space within the actual entranceway. But tafach hasamach l'chutz, if it's very wide, so in the tafach that's closer to the outside. But tchila shlisha elyon shel geva hashar, at the beginning of the top third, meaning you measure a third down, and right where that third begins going up, that's where you put the mezuzah. Nowadays, important to measure. I think that's a common pitfall. People don't, they just sort of estimate with their eyes. Actually, from experience, it seems to be difficult to estimate. You'd be surprised where the shlish is. If it's higher, then it's okay. As long as it's not actually at the lintel, as long as there's a tefach between the mezuzah and the mashke. Has to be to the right of the one going in. Then kvam is small psulim. It's on the left. It's on the wrong side. Then it's possible. Bayis shel shutfin chayiv mezuzah and bayis shel shutfin, which the Shulchan Aruch already included earlier in that the beginning of Seminary Shpeivav. Bayis shel shutfin is also chayiv mezuzah. The Rambam said if they're goyim involved, maybe not.
With the exception of the front door of the house, I think it doesn't matter if the exit's here.
Right. Halacha Yud Gimel. Probably. I think the inside is where. Chabad is different. I would assume the front is. Yemin HaNichnas. There's no doubt what the nichnas is. Nichnas labayis.
But it doesn't matter even though the door is opening towards you while you're walking in.
Yeah, because I think in this case it's just very obvious that there's the nichnas. Everything else in the house is more up for debate. Now that Rambam gives some hashkafa on the concept of mezuzah, this is really the end of the section of Hilchos Mezuzah within Hilchos Tefillah Mezuzah v'Sefer Torah. Chayav adam lizar b'mezuzah, to be very careful. Everyone's always obligated in mezuzah. Whenever you go in and out, yifka b'yichud shmoy shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's reminding you of Shema Yisrael Hashem Lakeinu Hashem Echad. Hashem's name is one. V'yizkar ahavah sign reminds you to love Hashem, v'ahavta, which is the whole theme of Sefer Ava, really, as we mentioned. V'yera mishnoso yushkiyase b'havli hazman. It's going to wake you up from falling asleep, following the nonsense of the time. It reminds you, this is all what you think when you see the Mezuza, that there's nothing that's eternal except knowing Hashem. And that reorients you, gets you back on track, the right daya, like the way the Rambam used the term daya. You follow the right track. Chazal said, you have tefillin on your arm and on your head, and your arm, and you have tzitzis on your clothing, and you have a mezuzah, muchzak lo yishlayach, you have a chazaka that maybe, I don't know if the Chazal say muftach, here it says muchzak, that you're not going to be chayta. Sheyesh le maskin and rabim. You have many reminders. And here the Rambam actually uses the term malachim, although it seems like the Rambam is flipping it around and saying that when we say malachim, what really meant was these, that these are the malachim. What's the malach? It's these things. There's a whole sikha about this. Hilchos of Tes, Beis. The Rebbe is masbir, the gather of the Chayv Adam Lizarv Mezuzah according to the Rambam, that lav dafka it's even mitzad the mitzvah, just the chaftz of the Mezuzah. And the Rebbe adds that even though I don't have it here, it says in Tfusim Shal Fanenu, in the end of this halacha, it says Brich Rachmana Disayan, as if it's the end of the halachas, even though Hilchos Mezuzah continues into, you have tomorrow we learn the Hilchos Sefer Torah, Perek Zion. He says it's all about the siyua. It's being menamis. There's a siyua. Literally, it's giving you the siyua in your avodas Hashem.
Yeah.